Hey guys, it's Sean, and I have a really special friend of mine I want to introduce to everybody, Dr. Brian King.
Remarkable, 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 remarkable.
Thank you for that. I appreciate you calling me. I'm just regular. I'm a regular friend. How about that?
All right, regular friend. Well, I guess we can go into it a little bit. We've known each other for better part of what, 10 years almost?
It has been, yeah. I would say I've known you for about 9 years, because that's how long I've been with my wife. And I met you shortly after I first got together with her. So I've known you less long than I've known my wife, but she's prettier. Yeah.
Much prettier. Shout out to Sarah. Besides my friend, we've done stand up together. We've traveled a little bit together.
I think the only thing we haven't done is a three-way. You and I have done a lot together, and there's probably only maybe a couple of reasons why we haven't done a three-way. but yeah, no, we have. We started out. We met in the stand-up community. We were doing comedy together. I remember you were a very funny comedian back in the day, and then I had a kid with the aforementioned Sarah, and I needed somebody to tour with me as my touring assistant, and you volunteered, and I took you on the road for several months, and we traveled all over the country together. If by all over the country I mean Michigan. I think we went other places. We've known each other for a long time. Every time I come through Tennessee, of course, we hang out or try to get together a little bit. Yeah, it's been one of the most enduring of my friendships that came out from that short time I spent in Florida.
No, I appreciate you, Dr. King. And that thing you said about me being a funny comedian, I digress. As you know, I was an addict, so I was just doing what I needed to do to get that booze. But we had some fun, I'm sure.
Apparently, they were paying you in drinks. It's like, you do 5 minutes on stage and you get a drink.
Yeah. I remember specifically it was St. Patrick's Day. We were in Chicago, and I was so distracted doing the day job element of that tour by the fact that it was St. Patty's Day, and all I wanted to do was run down to the bar and get a shot of Jameson. and you're like, look, man, you have one job.
Like, just get through the job. You see, like most people, they get through the job because the job pays for their addiction. They get through the job, and then as soon as they're off, they hit the bar. But no, your drive was strong. Yeah, I remember that Chicago weekend was interesting too, because we did some comedy, met up with an old friend of mine from San Francisco, and then the next weekend was even more memorable, because I attempted to take you with me to some gigs that I had lined up in Windsor, Ontario, right across the border from Detroit. And I'll never forget that, because here I am. I'm driving my car. I've got a comedy show lined up. Sean Mark sitting shotgun with me. He's we're it's going to be his international debut as a comedian.
I was so excited too.
And we get to the border, and for some reason they decide to stop us and give us the extra special check. Like, usually they just wave you through the border, but something about us. Maybe
well, yeah, you had a ton of boxes in the back of the car, and I guess I should tell the audience, Dr. King is also a celebrated author. And so we were trying to move a few of those volumes across state lines. And so the guys thought we had drugs. Like, what was that?
I don't know what they were thinking, but either way, drugs or books, you're not allowed to sell in Canada. And that wasn't the intent. I wasn't trying to sell them in Canada, but they were in the car because we had no place else for them. After the gig in Canada, we were going back to Detroit, and that's where we were going to sell them, But yeah, so they pulled us over for whatever reason, asked us to consent to a search, and then they did a little background check, and they found out that you were ineligible to enter the country, something that I previously had never heard of, But apparently, you were arrested for some petty crime in the United States. again, getting back to being an addict, and you serve your time for that, and that's. But according to Canada, you didn't serve enough time. so, so that was my first exposure to how much tougher Canada is on crime compared to the United States. It's like, I feel like if your society has said you've been punished enough for this particular crime, and then that's it. But no, apparently not. Apparently, if you go to Canada, they say, you need more jail time, buddy, or they didn't let you in. So I remember that was a really weird situation, and you got a little upset.
Okay, first of all, we were in no man's land is what it felt like. We were in a tunnel underneath a lake between America and Canada. Like, I just felt like at any point they'd open up the window and just let the fish in to get me. Like, It was, I remember they had their full like SWAT gear on, and for some reason these Canadians that we were talking to were giants also. They were like all 9 feet tall with body armor, like the automatic shotguns. I'm probably making this story sound a lot more scary than it was.
To be fair, though, Sean, for you, everybody's 9 feet tall. And, Canadians in general tend to be a little bit shorter than Americans, but you are an exception to the American rule.
Maybe my fear was heightened in that scenario. But yeah, no, that was I discovered Jet's Pizza not soon after that, after you dumped me off in Detroit, which I think was a smart move. Go ahead and go to Canada while you can. And if I remember correctly, you ended up buying a house in Canada a couple years after that.
A couple of years afterwards. In fact, to this day, the fact that I had I was turned away at the border with you that one time has haunted me ever since I bought this house, because for whatever reason, I got really, I fell in love with the city of Montreal. And I bought a house there. Now, in the back of my head, there is this fear that should I ever commit a crime in the United States, and I will no longer be allowed to visit Montreal and this house that I've purchased, and so that fear has just sat there in the back of my head. Okay, I got to make sure I don't do anything wrong ever, because I put a lot of money into Canada, so we'll see what happens. I'm definitely not hanging out with you anymore.
well, I had to meet you at that time, right? To kind of bring you back down to the ground as far as you're getting too high up there, man. You're trying to move north, and you started a family. Which how is the family these days?
They're good. They're really good. We actually just moved again to a place that I hope will be our permanent home for at least several years. We moved the family to North Carolina and bought a house. And we literally moved into the house last week. So as I'm talking to you right now, I'm looking at boxes. And I'm actually really, when you offered to do this podcast, I jumped to the opportunity because I'm really tired of unpacking boxes. And I figure any excuse to keep me from that is oh, sorry, babe, I couldn't do any boxes today. I had to do the podcast with Sean, That's a welcome excuse, really. So,
well, I'm glad to help you out with some procrastination. That's just one of the big words you taught me while we were on the trip. I think I really benefited just being on that journey with you because of how much you know. I mean, so I've mentioned before that you're a doctor, Dr. Brian King. We talked about you being a comedian, but like the wildest thing to me is that like you're a legit doctor also, and it's never a dull moment when I'm speaking with you because I'm not the brightest, and at any point you could just drop like any bit of knowledge, and I'm just like, whoa, what is that? Like that's so cool.
No, don't sell yourself short. You were able to hang. You got street smarts. Yeah. Educated on the mean streets of Gainesville. You're literally, and mean streets of Nashville. Apparently, you like to be homeless in cities that end in ville.
Well, I I haven't actually talked about that yet.
Did I just
No,
count it?
no, that's fine. I'm sure I'll talk to somebody at some point and we'll flesh that one out. Or we could just have you on again and just have a whole other episode.
Hey, and whatever keeps me from unpacking. I'll do 30 episodes with you in a row, and it'll be February, and I'm still looking at boxes.
Well, I wanted to have you on because, look around, we're already in the middle of it, but I'm starting a podcast. And, over the years, I've gotten a lot of encouragement to do that, a lot of encouragement to do a lot of different things that I haven't done. But, I believe you also encouraged me to write a book at some point, which maybe this will have to be the start of that. But
I no longer encourage you to do that.
Duly noted.
I'm done trying to encourage you.
So the idea of this podcast, I didn't want to start one because everything's so saturated now. It's just like I feel like there's already so many voices and so many thoughts going out there. But the one reason why I wanted to do it was actually something that stems back to a conversation that you and I had probably about 9 years ago. I took a comedy writing class with you when you were visiting in town and still courting your wife now. But and in that writing class, I sat down and we were a whole bunch of newbies down there, not really knowing exactly what was going on. And you were a more seasoned character just coming in. You're headlining our local venue, offered to sit in on a writing room. And I think at that point, we didn't even have a writing sort of sit down kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So you definitely inspired that there. And you inspired me because during that session, you were like, try to think of something that you're passionate about or something that you know a lot about. And in that setting, I was just like, I don't know. And you're like, well, what would bother you? And I'm like, nothing really bothers me like too much. Like I can get bothered, and you're like, well, then talk about that. Talk about how the fact that you're unbothered, like do something with that. And that got me thinking, because now, like, dude, I get bothered, man. Nashville traffic.
I wouldn't say that's a positive change.
No, to get back to what I was saying, I want to talk about the stages in life. Not so much, celebrate like the high peaks that we're at, because those are awesome. But when you're in the midst of those high peaks, you don't really need a whole lot of celebration. You're feeling it, you're riding it out, you're having a great time. But sometimes those instances can come to an end. I know for me, my life has been a constant up and down, but why not talk about that middle ground, that valley? It doesn't have to be the bottom. It doesn't have to be the very top. For me, the biggest thing has been once you jump into a situation where things start to feel unfamiliar, how do you handle yourself? How do you rebuild from there? With you being a doctor of psychology, I figured you might have a little bit more insight on that system. And I know you do because I've read it in your books. And I really love the way that you phrase it in the books. But I don't know anything about cerebellums or the intricate processes of the brain the way that you might be able to share.
Mm-hmm. So you want me to talk about how we bounce back?
Or just the generalization of it, how some people can do it and how it's harder for other people.
Well, I will say this: human beings in general are remarkably resilient. You can look around the world and see that this is the case. We have civilized parts of the world that we human beings should not realistically be living in. Extreme temperatures, extreme, heights, extreme lows, all kinds of places. We've done it. We are really good at fitting ourselves into whatever situation we find ourselves in. And, to use the natural world as a metaphor, if a human being can adapt to living in 100-degree heat with no water, desert, climate, and another human being can adapt to living at 10,000 feet in the air with no oxygen and heavy snowfall and and horribly cold temperatures, and if those different sets of human beings can thrive, now obviously there's something in us that allows us to adapt to different circumstances, and that adaptability is called resilience. Now most of us will not go from Death Valley to the Andes. That's, I mean, maybe on vacation we might go to one of those places, but that our life is not going to have those dramatic types of changes. Instead, we're going to have changes like job loss, or food insecurity, or relationships that break out, that break up, or whatever. And compared to the types of changes that are life threatening, like living in different environments that we're unsuited for and so forth, those kind of changes really pale in comparison. Yeah, they feel like they are incredibly important to us in the moment, because they are. They definitely, we need to eat, we need to have a place to live, we need people to love us, we need people to love, we need all those things, but we are remarkably good at weathering it and figuring it out. Now, in the moment, it may not feel like we are. In the moment, we might feel it's the end of the world, this is the worst thing ever. These circumstances are awful, but we do have a way of working it out. And whether or not it works out in the way that we hope, in the way that we are anticipate, or in the way that we would visualize for ourselves, that's who knows. The point is that it does work out and life goes on. To recognize that is a really important and simple psychological trick, basically, is that we have to know that whatever happens, things are going to work out for us. Circumstances get dire, they get better. Circumstances are really good, they get worse. We have to appreciate that change is an inevitability. The thing that we need to focus on, of course, is learning how to adapt to that change. Now, I just moved my family across country, which is a lot of change. And I've done that several times. And it's not something I enjoy. I hate it every time. In fact, I bought this house specifically hoping that I'm not going to move ever again, but the chances are I probably will. That's the thing, is that as soon as I settled and I announced that I bought a house here in North Carolina, many of my friends, most of them comedians, are opposed. Oh, so that means we're going to be leaving in 6 months. It's just the nature of my lifestyle. A lot of changes that take place, and a lot of life events that have happened crammed into one period of time, and one overall transition of moving cross country to another state. New job, new school, not obviously a new house, but new culture, new society, and so forth. And not everybody faces those kinds of changes on a regular basis, but whatever change that we're focused with, we are adaptable. It's just a matter of how we're going to push through and recognize that, yes, I can respond to this. Resilience is measured by how quickly we adapt to changing circumstances, and we're all different in that capacity. Some of us adapt very well, very quickly, but some of us, as you've read in my books, take a little bit longer, and during that time that it's taking us longer to adapt, our heads are just full of thoughts, negative thoughts, and those maybe we're overly focused. Oh man, this stinks. Oh, I can't believe this is happening. Oh, this is horrible. Why is this happening to me, and so forth. But it's just a temporary condition, and the more we can recognize the temporary nature of these circumstances we find ourselves in, I think the better off we'll be overall.
No, that is awesome, man.
Well, let me say this about you. You've been in some pretty bad circumstances. I've seen you at some serious lows, and I think right now you're probably riding the high. One thing that I hope that you've learned, and I think you have, but one thing I hope you've learned from those lows is that not to take this high for granted.
Oh, yeah.
Things can change like that. Things can change in the blink of an eye. Suddenly you find yourself without a job. Suddenly you find yourself not being able to pay your mortgage. Suddenly you find your wife leaving you. Suddenly you find, things just happen, And I think that because you've suffered some pretty horrible negative consequences, in the past, I think you're not fearful of that happening in the future. In fact, you almost have, there's a benefit to having suffered through those low points in your life, because now you know that A, you're capable of it, and B, you're cherishing the life you're currently living. Is that correct?
Yeah, no, that's 100%. The biggest thing was, we joked about me being addicted earlier, and like it honestly took time for me to realize that. Talking to you now, I'm 5 years without alcohol, and that's only increased the ability to recognize. Like I've always had that kind of resilience physically, like in my genes, but to be able to come to a place mentally, without the distractions, to be able to think and be like, and process it and be, this isn't terrible. I've gotten through a lot worse, like, so now, and then also just maturing, and I have stepkids now, a wife. There's so many new parts about who Sean is now that have really allowed me to really harness and like I said earlier, process all these emotions and thoughts and not let it get away like it used to. Now, do I, feel like I'm going to ride this high forever? Probably not. You know what I mean? Like, when I moved here, it was a completely different level of existence than where I'm at right now. I hope not to go back there, but if things do teeter off, I'm also totally confident that, it's not going to affect me the way that it did when I was first, here, or during the times that you and I knew each other. And, I think that's the big key part about, us on this blue planet is, what can we do when the punches are coming at us? You know what I mean? Do you just stop? Do you freeze? Do you just let it hit you in the face, or do you roll out of it? Do you better yourself from that situation?
Yeah. I always use the expression resilience is your ability to take a punch. If you talk about strength and use a strength metaphor, how strong you are it refers to how your ability to throw a punch. How strong, your measure of strength is how much force can you bring onto an opponent. But your resilience is how much of a punch can you take? How much a hit you can take. And I've never been that physically strong. So I can't really hurt somebody all that much with a punch. But I've always been able to take a punch. I've always been able to deal with it. Roll with the punches. And it's a little bit of a dated reference now because it's been over 15 years or so, but in one of my books, I use the example of Captain America in the first Captain America movie. And I know you're a comic book geek, so
Yep.
What I'm talking about. But Captain America, as depicted in this movie, it was like getting the crap beat out of him by a guy, outside of a movie theater. And he kept standing up, and the guy says, just stay down. And that's where he sort of says, I can do this all day, and what I always talk about resilience is whatever that guy has, in that moment in his life, whatever gets him to keep standing up, whatever gets him to keep pushing forward, despite this, horrible obstacle, this difficult circumstance, it's that internal drive, that need to just, be yourself, stand up for yourself and so forth. And that's really what resilience gets down to. You mentioned the cerebellum. Resilience is a function of a part of your brain called the prefrontal cortex. And it has a lot to do with the way we think, and the types of thoughts we tell ourselves on a regular basis. It has a lot to do with having a positive mindset. It has a lot to do with optimism, and it has a lot to do with wisdom. What you've suffered through in the past, that you've survived it, and that this thing that's happening right now, it's not nearly as bad as what happened before. And you can and will get through it.
100%, Brian. And just for our listeners who are first discovering you here, where can they find your books?
Man, everywhere. Just look for Dr. Brian King books. I have a website, drbrianking.com. I'm on social media on every platform as Dr. Brian King. My books can be found. I'll tell you this: if you find me and then use a link through my social media, I get like an extra royalty because you bought it from my link. But you can buy my books anywhere, Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, whatever local stores you have. Yeah, I've sold quite a bit in the Nashville area, so there is some people in your market that are probably going to be like, "Ooh, I know that guy. I've read his book."
Well, I hope so, man. Do you have any plans? I know you said you're settling into your new house, but do you have any tours coming up?
I've got. Oh man, I just want to settle into my house, and then what I really want to do. I just want to play in my yard with my daughter.
Oh.
I bought this house because of the yard. I have about a half acre of land. The previous owners had set up a clubhouse and some swings in the land. I guess they had some children and they left them for us. And so my daughter is, as soon as I saw the clubhouse, I was like, yeah, that's going to be our house. My daughter loves it. I've had a kid for a while, and we've had a couple of different houses in the past several years. And this is the first one where my daughter comes home and actively says, "Daddy, can I go outside and play in the yard?" And I was like, because she wouldn't say that at our last place because the yard wasn't very interesting, And so now I'm like, yes, that's why I bought it. Get out there and play in the yard. Take the cat, take everything, I really just want to be here and present with my family for a while. I could get super bored of that and decide to go back on tour. But right now I got no plans. I'm planning. I think I'll probably just gig around the accessible area. I live in North Carolina, so I think like either anywhere in North, South Carolina, or even Virginia, a couple hour drive away, I'll probably do gigs. But I've just been focused on settling. It's been nice.
Well, that was probably selfish of me to ask because I love you, Dr. King, and I haven't seen you in a while. So you just let me know. And
you want me to come to Nashville? I'm coming to Nashville. That's it. I don't care. We'll do this. We'll do the next podcast live. I'll be like, baby, I got to go to Nashville. Duty calls.
I love it. I love it. Well, speaking of your family, I think now is probably a great time to let you go back to them. Thank you so much for dropping by.
Please don't. They're gonna make me unpack stuff. I have to put together my daughter's couch. She's got her own couch, Sean. That's great.
Oh, wow.
This is what happens when you're an only child, and your father is like a little bit older, a little bit more successful. Like if I was 18 and I had a kid, it'd be radically different. But she's got 2 bedrooms in my house. One bedroom for sleeping and one for playing. And we're setting up a couch in the playroom.
Oh, wow.
I gotta go do that.
Well, have a great day, Dr. King. Always a pleasure. And again, love you, man. Thanks for stopping by.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
ReMarkAble, 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 ReMarkAble.